Yeah. So today we're going to plane some timber, right? And you're going to have a piece of rough face. Then we've got to get square, which what I mean by square, 90 degrees. So at the moment you can see a gap under there, yeah? We want to get it perfectly square. And then what we need to do then is take it down to the right dimensions for working, okay? So once you've got a square side, this side will be parallel, and the same for the other side, okay? So a few things we need to find out first is a plane. You're going to be using a jack plane today. So a jack plane is a long one. It's for getting boards flat. So it's getting rough boards perfectly flat that way because you've got a long base. So if there's a discrepancy, I don't know if you can see this now on the video, but say for example the wood over exaggeration is like that, yeah? If I used a really small plane, that plane will just follow those bumps, okay? If I use this plane, it's going to hit on all the high points and then take it down flat, so it'll be perfectly flat. That's why we use a bigger plane. So, a few things you need to know about a plane. Front handle, back handle, it's quite self-explanatory. When you're holding it, about 80% of your pressure is downwards, so you should be able to hold it on that nose, the front part of the plane there. And then as you start to push then, it'll all be nice and flat to travel through. So you're always going to go about 80% downward, and then as you push, your downward pressure is still there, but you're doing forward momentum. And then as you come to the end then, you don't want to put any pressure down because it'll just dip off. You want to end it like that, okay? So the back of your plane is still flat to your timber. Everyone follow that? If you need to ever take your plane apart, this part here is called a lever cap. So that holds the blade in place. Yeah, some of them are screw thread, some of them are just on a hinge like that. And then you pop this out. You have your blade, and this is called your backing iron, okay, or your chip iron. So what that does is sits, I don't know if you can zoom in there, it sits only a few millimeters back from the edge of your blade, okay? So what that does then, it transfers, oh shit, stabbed myself. It transfers the chips then upwards, okay? This part here is called a frog. I don't have a clue why it's called a frog, okay? It's just been called that for a very, very long time. But in this frog, you have adjustments. So you shouldn't have to adjust these two here, because that pushes the whole frog forward or back. The only adjustments you need to make is one on this lever and two on this screw thread at the back, okay? So we put it back in with the chip iron facing up, and then we'll clamp it back in. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. If it's not tight, you need to screw that thread to get it to the pinch, okay? So how you adjust your plane now, what you need to do is look down the flat part of your plane, and you'll be able to see if your blade is at an angle, okay? If it's at an angle, which this is, I move this lever iron here, okay? And you can actually see the blade moving back and forth. What you need to get is your plane needs to be, the blade needs to be parallel to this, okay? To your bed. And then, if it's out too far, you use that screw cap then to unscrew it. But when you start unscrewing, it'll just go loose, okay? So it's just quite loose now like that. When it starts going tight again, that's when it starts moving, okay? So it's a little bit of play in it, and then you can adjust it from there. So let me just get this out to where I roughly want it. Now, because I'm taking rough stuff down, I'll pass this round. If you look down it, and then pass it on, look the other way so you can see the blade. See how much is sticking out? That's how much you want it sticking out, okay? You just press pause a minute if you want. What we need to do now is get one face flat, But one thing you need to bear in mind when you're planing this timber, so timber selection is key. Why have I picked up a piece of that one and not that one? Because of the knot. Okay, so it's going to be very difficult for me to plane that. What I mean by that is, as this tree has been growing, that knot is effectively a branch. So as that branch comes out in that direction, you've got multiple grain directions. So it comes up that way, it's going that way. It's very hard to plane. I'm not saying it can't be done, but don't make your life hard for now. Try and pick one that's pretty straight grain, okay, and minimal knots. Small knots is not so bad, but just bear in mind that, okay. The other thing we need to bear in mind when we first start cutting is grain direction. So if I draw on here, say for example my grain direction is going down like that, okay, which way would I want my direction of plane to travel? Would I want it to go that way or that way? I would want it to come this way. So if you think of when you stroke a dog, if you stroke a dog from his head down, it's smooth. If you go the other way, from his arse back up, it's rough, isn't it? Yeah? So it's going against the grain. So you might not, because this grain looks fairly straight, you might not know which way to spin it first of all. You'll find it out though as soon as you start planing. So put it in your vise, and then you might want to come around now. Morgan actually video that rather than my gorgeous face. So because the plane is not as wide as the board, if I just planed in the middle now, I'll end up just planing a little bit down the centre and not on either side. So what I want to do is work my plane, so I'll do one on this side, one on that side, and I'll take it down even until it's all flat, okay? How do I know when it's flat? Anybody? So I'll only know when it's flat is when I'm doing one long plane of cut. So at the moment, that's hitting and missing, okay? So I'm nearly there, yeah? To be honest, it's a bit too deep, so I'll just adjust that now. Right, so pressure on the front, and I'm pushing in, and I'm not dipping my plane down when I get to the end, because I'm going to end up taking bits off. So see that there now? That's pretty much the length of my timber, so I know that that cut is flat. Yeah? Right, so I'll test it now. And how I test it, so I know I've got a long flat way going that way, but how do I know I'm flat going in that direction? Just place that on. There's a bit of a bump in there. Yeah, you see it? So I know now I need to take a bit off the middle section. And then I'll test it again. That's better. Okay? Yeah? So now I've established I've got one perfect flat side. I'll mark it with my face. That's why we've always done our face marks. So, to get it square now, what I need to do, can you see that on the camera more? See the gap underneath there? That tells me that I'm not 90 degrees, okay? Or I'm not square. So what I need to do is take down, one, I need to get it all nice and smooth, and two, I need to get it to 90 degrees. So, I know I need to take some off this side first, okay? Sometimes your plane will get clogged up with bits, So clear it out and go again. Right, rest that. And instead of testing it that way now, we test it by putting the stock of our square up tight to our good edge, and then we'll place it on. We need to take a lot off there. We get a sweat on now. I'll try that again. That's better. A little bit there, a little bit there. So I'm good there, but I need to take a smidge off this side. And it's constantly check and test, check and test. There we go. So once that's done, I then mark it with my face edge. Yeah? So let's get to that stage now. You can press pause now if you want. So once you've got your face side, you've done your 90 degrees, you've got your face edge. The next stage, so you should have 2 plain sides, 2 rough sides, okay? So the next stage now is to get the rough side parallel to your plain sides, okay? So how we do that is, if I show you the smaller section, and then I don't have to worry about showing you that because it's just replicated over the next thing. So, if you're doing a test or you need to plane down a piece of timber to a certain measurement, then you will have to set your marking gauge to that measurement. For this, we're just going to come down a few millimeters. So I'm going to set my marking gauge. So you shouldn't need your square anymore. That should be done with. So I'm going to set my marking gauge. So it's just, I'm taking a small section off. Okay. But sometimes we will test you on this and say, right, I need you to plane me a piece of timber 45 by 73, and you've got to take it down to that measurement. Whether you cut it down first and then plane it afterwards, it's up to you. So I'm going to put, so off my face edge, that's why we always do everything off your face edge, face side. I'm going to scribe, it's pretty nice. I'm going to use my marking gauge. I'm going to scribe a line all the way down. I'm going to go across the top. Down the good edge. You can zoom in on this in a minute, Morgan, I'll show you. Can you see that one? Okay, so we've planed that, and then if you look down the side, the one side is slightly thicker than the other. But what that determines is, that shows that it's higher this side than it is this side. But because we've marked it with our gauge off our planed edge, we know that that gauge line is parallel, right? So we've got to go down to that gauge line now. So the good thing about this now is that you've got, it's very visual. As you start planing, you can see which side, I'm going to test it with your square, because you can see which side's going to come off more, okay? So again, start to get it flat. And I can start to see now, I'm nearly at my line there, but I've got to take a bit more off there, and this side needs to come off more. So I'll do a couple of strokes on this side. And I'm nearly there. We might have to do more. Just zoom in on that little line in a second. If you come this side, you'll see it. It's not quite taking off there. 2 seconds. So, I don't know if you can quite see it yet. There. So, if you look there, where my gauge line has been, can you see it on there? Where my gauge line has been, it's made an indentation, so I can see how parallel I am on both sides. Okay, so you can actually see where that groove is. And once you come down, it's nearly there. A little bit more. And you've got to your line, and then you've got some nice clean strokes, and you should be parallel all the way around then. So once you've done that, you know you're right. You don't have to mark it with a face side, because that's your true face side. And then the next stage is go across and do the big flat bit. Any questions? Perfect.